From one of the scariest villains in the show, to him leading a community full of cannibals, here's all the subtle changes The Last of Us Episode 8 made to David's character. So I'm gonna be honest about this. This episode of HBO show is a bit different from the video game, and you might actually not even realize it since they played it very smart. And I'll tell you how. Look, the first season of the show shows how much Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann care about getting the video game right. And the fans are consciously waiting for the ending, which will be bittersweet to say the least. But in episode 8, David, who's the leader of a commune, is introduced to the audience. At first, he seems to want to help Ellie and Joel, but it turns out that he has much darker reasons and ways to help the community stay alive. In the game, where you've got to kill zombies, one of the scariest encounters they have is with a human. And David is basically a really creepy guy that Ellie has to save herself from. But in the series, he gets to show a lot more of his personality. The 8th episode starts with David preaching to his commune instead of Ellie meeting him. And right from that scene, it's clear that David's in charge of the group and that they're religious. There aren't many resources in the commune, and a mother and a young girl are seen crying over a recent death.
This is my friend James. We're from a larger group, women, children, and we're all very, very hungry.
And David tells them that their loved one will be buried in the spring. Now, gamers who've played The Last of Us would know right away that David's group are cannibals. But people who have only watched the show might not know that the young girl's father won't be buried, but eaten later in the episode. Gross? I know. Plus, here's the thing. David isn't shown to be a cannibal in the first scene. Instead, he's shown to be this man who's trying to keep his community together. This gives David's character more depth, and the audience might even think David is being honest. The gamers, however, don't see much of David's commune in the video game, but in the 8th episode, the community is shown eating people. Subtle, I'd say. When David and James bring Ellie's deer back to the community, they find that venison stew has already been made. But here's what really throws me off.
Comes back with what I need. The deer is all yours. Anyone else shows up...
You put one right between my eyes.
That's right.
The venison is actually the young girl's father? This makes it even scarier to see the people in the commune, especially the little girl and her mother, eat their food. David munches down on his food calmly, knowing who's in his bowl, and that just makes him even creepier. Which also leads me to point out another subtle change. If you notice closely, when Ellie wakes up in David's cage in the game, it's kinda obvious what they do. She sees men cut up a body, which makes Ellie worry that the same thing could happen to her. Even though David tries to get her to join his commune, she stands up for herself and doesn't change her mind. But in the show, Ellie doesn't know that these people are cannibals until later in the day when she sees a torn-off ear in the room. But there are many hints in the story's background that David and his group eat people, like how David's past as a teacher is shown, and it fits with what he does now as a preacher and community leader, even though he's creepy. One might hope that David's experience as a teacher would make him more understanding, but it could also explain why he's so obsessed with Ellie.
To survive. And so do we. We have to take care of our own, by any means necessary.
He'd have taught young girls, maybe around Ellie's age when he was a teacher. So this is how he could have gotten too close to his students by pretending to be a friendly adult that the kids could talk to. I mean, this is how he presents himself to Ellie, so it's nothing that's not obvious. Although Ellie's understandably scared of David, she talks to him about how he eats people. David tries to persuade her that they only ate people when they had no other option, but the 3 dead bodies that Joel finds seems to show that this isn't the case. The cannibalism reveal is scarier because David's character keeps changing, and not everyone in the commune knows that they're eating people. And later, David tells Ellie that she reminds him of himself when he tries to get her to join him. To her shock, he tells her that her heart beats fast. "My heart has always been very strong," he says. Even though the scene is very similar, He never tells her in the game that she has a violent heart. And this comment kinda foreshadows Ellie's violent turn in The Last of Us Part 2, when she starts to get revenge in brutal ways at the end. But see, before this point in the HBO show, Ellie had never killed someone on screen in such a horrible way. In Episode 7, there are hints that Ellie had to kill Riley after she got infected, but Ellie's killing of David shows him a different side of her. He might be right about Ellie's tendency to be violent, but at this point in the series, Ellie doesn't act at all like David.
Buddy. Naturally, she obviously isn't going to trust a random guy and his buddy in the middle of a snowy forest.
But this violent heart comment will get scarier as the show continues to adapt the Last of Us video game series. One thing Episode 8 did not hide was the fact that Ellie killed David in a brutal way. But the scene where Joel finds her and comforts her has been changed. Basically, in the video game, he finds her after seeing her kill David. As the building around them burns, he tries to comfort her. However, in HBO's Episode 8, Joel finds her standing in the snow outside the building. She's upset, she's shaking, she's scared, and he comforts her just like in the game. In the scene, Joel calls her baby girl for the first time in the series, and this adds a lot of emotional depth to the scene. Plus, at the end of the episode, Joel and Ellie are back together, but their lives will never be the same again. Now, it's likely that Episode 9 of the show will probably show how killing David affected Ellie, but it'll also end Season 1 of The Last of Us, so I really can't say anything as of yet. But these minor changes also left the fans most surprised. Twitter was filled with people constantly praising Craig Mazin and Ali Abbasi for the work of art they've created. Ellie's fight with the cult members took the spotlight, and the ratings have never been higher. 8.1 million views is no joke, especially when it's literally 74% more than the actual well-marketed premiere. It made HBO Max currently the top streaming service. Yeah, they better thank Druckmann and Mazin for this one. And while fans are desperately waiting for the season finale, they can't stop talking about Ellie's fight. More than half of The Last of Us fandom was surprised at how vile they turned David's character. Honestly, if I compare the game version of David, I can easily say that the show just made him 10 times worse. But I guess that was sort of needed in order to make sure the show really embodies the essence of the game. Sure, cannibalism's kind of dark in the first place, but seeing it all happen in a live action? Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever forgetting this anytime soon. With that, those are all the subtle yet insanely cool changes they made to David in The Last of Us.